In this lesson, I want to talk about what do you do when you already have a chart and how do you then add new data to it. And so, as you will recall, this is what we started with the last time. We had some sales data for different retail categories, okay, and we plotted it using a bar chart. But now we have some target data here, and we want to add it to this chart. And so there's a couple ways that we can do this, okay? The simplest way is to come to the chart and right click on it and say I want to select what data I'm going to be plotting. And once you do this, you can come here and you can say I want to add a new series to this chart, and I'm going to say I want to add the series, and the series name is going to be targets, or what's in E5. And then here I'm going to say it's going to be equal to this data here. That equals 1 is just a placeholder, okay? And we just take it out and put equals again and then select the data. And when we do this, now we have our data. Notice that here, because it doesn't have any labels next to it, the horizontal categories are given these numbers. And so we can also fix that by saying, hey, the labels here are going to be the same as the labels from our original data here. And so now we say, okay, and now we have the data that we want to plot here. And so we can also add, we don't have a legend here, so let's go ahead and add our legend to make sure that we see what's happening here. And so, by the way, if we want to switch the order of how these appear, what we can do is we can again go right click, select data, and here we can use these little arrows to switch the order of how things are plotted. Okay, so now we have sales first and then the targets. So that's one way to do it. And of course, we could come here and say, because I have this in orange, I can come to my format and I can say, I want these to have a fill that's going to be orange. Okay, not for sales, sorry. I want to click on the target here and then change the fill to orange. And now I have our sales and our targets here for us to see. So that's one way. The second way for us to do this is to basically just go ahead and select our data, and then holding the control key, pick up the targets. And then here we're just going to say insert, and we're going to come down here and we're going to say we want to insert this bar chart. Okay, so that's the second way. And of course, then we would need to do all of the things that we did before in order to kind of deal with our axes and so forth. But that's the way to do it. So select both of them and then using the control key to select the targets. Let me actually take this out because we don't need that. Okay, so now I want to, so this is basically what we did here is we added the series. Okay, so now I actually want to talk about how do we do this where we can create what's called a combo chart. So I'm going to move this chart over here, and I'm actually going to add a new chart which we're going to call a combo chart. And so let me show you what that is going to look like. And so the first thing I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to select this chart. I'm going to press Control C and I'm going to press Control V. And now what I've done is I actually have a second copy of my chart. And what I want to do now is rather than using the chart that I have here, I'm actually going to modify it. And the way that I'm going to modify it to get a combo chart is by going to the design and saying, I want to change the chart type. And at the very bottom here, we're going to see a combo chart, okay? And what a combo chart does is it actually allows us to plot two different chart types in the same chart, okay? And so here, what it tried to do is it actually tried to put a clustered column and a line. And what I'm going to do here, and of course, we also have the option of using a secondary axis. And so this is useful if the measures that I have are actually different. So let me actually take a step back and actually, let me not take a step back. What I want to do here is I want to have my sales be a clustered column. So let me do that. Okay, and I want my targets to be a line. Okay, but as you will recall, so let's go ahead and say okay. And let me uncheck the box, since in this example I don't need a secondary axis. I have my combo chart here. Let me go ahead and say I want to add my horizontal axis. Okay, and so now I have my axis here, but what we said is that we don't want to have lines over kind of categorical data. Okay, so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to say, okay, for these targets, I actually don't want them to be a line. And so I'm going to go to the, I'm going to click on the line, okay, and I'm going to say I want to format this data series. And when I do that, if I click here, okay, on the bucket, I'm going to have a choice about how to format the line and the line mark and the markers. And so what I'm going to first say is that I actually don't want a line, okay, but I do want to add markers to my data. And the markers that I'm going to add are going to be just an X here. Okay, so now I can see how my data, and let me change this color too, because it's a little bit difficult to see. So let me make these blue, maybe a lighter blue here. Okay, and let me make the markers the shape outline of the markers, not the line. So let me come back here and make the marker options. Let me change their color. Change the color here to be orange. Okay, so now, and I can make these a little bigger. So let me make them orange, and I'm going to make them a little larger. So maybe here. Okay, so now I have a list of where, you know, my sales are and where I am with my targets. So this is a really nice way to kind of combine two pieces of data. Okay, there's actually a trick that I learned recently where we can actually change these to actual lines that are going to look really great. So let me show you what that might look like. So if we come to the marker options and we say we want to put a line, unfortunately those lines are really tiny and they're not really looking that great. So one of the things that we can do is we can actually insert a line that looks like what we want. And so if we go to the insert and under shapes, we're just going to pick a line and we're going to draw the line exactly the size that we want. Okay, and by the way, if your line is crooked, you can come here and just set it to 0 and then it's going to be straight. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to make this line to be a heavier line. So we want it to be kind of a heavier line, and then we want it to be orange. Okay, and now what we're going to do in order to use this particular format on these is we're going to click on them. Actually, we're going to come here. We're going to do Control C. We're going to click on these, and we're going to press Control V. These are this is a little too large. So let's come back here and make them a little smaller. Okay, so I think that looks good. Maybe 0.25. And now Control C, come back here, select these and Control V. I think that looks much better. Okay, so that's one thing that we can do. We're not actually, you know, we don't just have to, we can't just use kind of this symbol. If we were to insert, let's say, an icon. Okay, so let me open here an icon, and let me put in an icon of, let's say, a bullseye. Okay, so let's do that. Here's our bullseye. We're going to make it exactly the size we want it to be. Okay, and now we're going to Control C, and if we come here, we're going to Control V, and now we are going to get our bullseyes everywhere where we want it to be. Okay.